Hi everyone, this is Callie from Truth and Story, and I do apologize for my voice. I am getting over the flu, and I have this little window after I've taken a bunch of meds and they've kicked in, and I wanted to just do something that I knew wouldn't be a real long video, and just because I'm really interested. I watched Nobody Here, Annika from Nobody's Here did a video on this, and I will put a link to that below. I really highly recommend you listen to it because I thought it was really interesting. And I think she was responding to somebody else. I haven't gone back and watched those yet. So I'm just kind of continuing more of the conversation with Annika here. But it was, the tag I think was hashtag Johari Window Tarot. Now, I had heard of the concept of the Johari window. I'm assuming I probably heard it. I took a few psychology classes in college. I'm assuming that I heard it there, but it's a concept that I did understood, that is sort of a method at looking at things, and it's something that I had known about. I'm not sure this is actually going to work. I keep having to stop to cough, so it may become too disjointed. So the concept of this is sort of breaking sort of yourself, or how you are perceived and perceive yourself, into 4 quadrants. This side of the quadrants are things that you know about yourself, and this side are ones that you don't know. These down here are not known to others, where these up here are known to others. So you have what others know here, and you know, and what you know but others don't know about you. You have sort of this blind spot here where others can see, perceive this about you, but you don't see that about yourself. And then you have this real unknown spot here that you don't know about yourself, and others don't know about you. It's sort of this blind spot here. What was interesting is I'm assuming that the original starters of this, used that to do a tarot spread. But what was interesting with Annika's video is that she really talked about so great, what do you do with that? Like, how do you look at this and gain any information? The key to this is that you want to sort of bring this corner down, right? So you want to sort of grab the center column and sort of bring it down diagonally, so that what you know and what others know about you all becomes more known and more pulled together in a very rough explanation there. So I thought it was interesting, and I thought, I'd like to throw those down and just kind of see what comes up and what that might something to chew on. It seems like I know Annika, and then somebody that she was talking about. It's one of those things that you kind of maybe want to sit and chew over, because one of the things I thought was really interesting is that what you don't know about, the others don't necessarily know about you. I'm not sure that you necessarily need to work towards other people seeing that. Yes, you want, obviously, people to see yourself authentically, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that every part of yourself has to be on display. So you think, we talk about the gaze a lot, certainly the male gaze, or that kind of stuff is talked about a lot in literature. But gaze in general, or even with Lenormand and Kipper, you talk a lot about the private sphere and the public sphere. I don't necessarily think the goal is that all of ourselves needs to be on display for the gaze of others at all times. I don't personally necessarily think that's going to be very healthy either. And I'm not saying that that's the point of this method, but this is just things that come up in my brain. And Annika talked a lot about our blind spot being more about sort of defensive measures. We may not see them in ourselves because we might be reacting defensively. Whereas down here, what others don't know that you do know may incorporate a lot of our coping mechanisms, which I think are important. We need coping mechanisms to get through certain situations. And So it's just really, it's interesting. I guess that is the very not cohesive point, is I just found the whole thing to be interesting. Again, in conjunction with the video that is linked below. I highly recommend that you watch that. That's more what I'm reacting about. So I'm just using a deck that I really don't know very well. It just seemed like I just thought I'd pull it out and try it for this. I haven't had it very long. A lovely viewer had sent this to me, and I think from their own collection. Perhaps this wasn't one they got on with, and so I thought I would give this a try. This is called the Slow Holler Tarot, and I've definitely seen a lot of great reviews from people about this. It wasn't one that was particularly like on my list. I'm not usually a fan of collaborative decks. Not that I'm not a fan of them, but I don't find them useful. Because they often, for me, feel disjointed. This one does stay with a balanced color palette of golds and blacks and reds that I think does a really good job of putting some grays. Does a great job of, I think, making it feel more cohesive than generally a multi-artist deck does. I love the cardstock. If you're a riffle shuffler, I can imagine some people may not, but it shuffles really well. So let's just, for the fun of it, let's just lay these down in this Johari window. Johari, I might be saying that wrong, but let's see what we get. So I'm going to pull the top card of the split for the arena, or what other people know. And then I'm going to pull the second card for what other people know that I may not know. Or I don't know, I think this is how it would technically be. I'm going to pull the very bottom card for the unknown, and then the next bottom card for the things that I know that other people may not be aware of. So this deck does change some things. I don't know if the Traveler is the Knight card. So this would be the Knight of Wands. The Sun card, 5 of Stones, 4 of Branches. Branches, again, would be Wands. So I think we don't have any that require too much explanation here. So I am going to take a look at the guidebook. Again, I will eventually do a walkthrough of this, but, I just decided I was going to take a look at it. And so, and just to kind of get a feel for this, I'm going to take a look at the guidebook just to get a feel for how they would see it. So obviously here we have the Knight of Wands, and this does talk about creativity. It talks about striking out in 1,000 directions. That's definitely me. Ready to take a risk, brimming with infectious enthusiasm. Does say quick to anger. I'm definitely not. I'm actually very slow to anger. Once it erupts, it erupts, but burns fast and then it's over. But I'm actually quite slow to anger. Easily swept away by tides of their latest passion. It's very much me. So this is apparently something that other people know about me, and I also know about myself, and this definitely makes sense. I have always been very enthusiastic. I'm always one can start 100 things, but then do I finish 100 things? Not always. It's something I've worked on over the course of my life to try to balance, because I know that about myself. But I'm very excited at the start of things, and the older I've gotten, the better I've gotten at picking things that I'm enthusiastic about, but there is also a potential reaching an end point to that's realistic. so that I don't start 1,000 things that I realistically am never going to be able to finish. So I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older, to moderating that, as we all do, right? We all, you know, obviously with the hopes of, as we live our life, that we learn to work with ourselves and figure out the best way to manage those kinds of things. So, I do think that this, it's in reverse, it says to balance the enthusiasm with patience, which is definitely true. So this to me makes perfect sense. I definitely think that people see this about me, and I definitely see this about myself. And again, it's something that I've worked with and tried to bolster the good side of that, the enthusiastic side of that, but tamper down the unrealisticness that can be from hopping all over the place. So there we have that. I guess I don't know how best to look at these, but that one jumped out because it was quite obvious. It was easy for me to, I could see myself in there, and I could see where other people can see that in myself as well. It's why I love cartomancy. It's why I like all systems of divination. That enthusiasm is not, I don't think is too hard to pick out in myself. What's interesting is that we have the Five of Stones for what I know about myself, but what others maybe don't see. And I say maybe, I mean, I think technically this is that you don't see it. I think sometimes we think people don't see things, but they do actually see them. The Five of Stones speaks of a time when things seem to fall apart and the center cannot hold. This card is about the perception of scarcity, which is not the same as actual lack. The same armor that keeps threat out also keeps new possibilities out. So this is about kind of stealing ourselves from the world and putting on, you know, we put protective layers on ourselves in order to cope. Again, this is, you know, very much about coping mechanisms, and I'm obviously not going to go overly deep into my own personal things, but this certainly works. This is that idea of, you know, preparing for the worst, so that and that's definitely something in which I struggle with a lot. And again, sometimes it's a good thing, because you need to, if you know that there are things that are going to happen that are very difficult, then you sort of set yourself up and try to prepare as best that you can for those things. The problem is obviously sometimes the coping mechanisms that help us can also cause over time to become solidified and not be so helpful. So this certainly, especially, I quite like the way, this is the first time I've really looked at the guidebook. I quite like the way this is written about. And this is talking about a geode, that as a geode reminds us, a cracked stone may reveal treasures inside that would have remained unseen without the force that split it open. So this is quite relevant. I will say this is something that's quite relevant, and there's a lot, I think, to unpack there as well. And I don't think, and I guess when I try to think about this on the way of people seeing me, especially people maybe that know me in person, I definitely think that's the case. I think that a lot of people, especially, I'll go back just to further times, you know, when Michael was sick and I was younger, a lot of people had the perception that I was sort of superwoman, that I was doing it all, had a great attitude, wasn't scared of anything. You know, that was that outside shell. But I think a lot of people were very surprised, or would have been very surprised, to know that there was a lot of layers of stone set in place so that I could function that way. And I don't think that that was something that's known. So I think I work a little bit, again, the older we get, I'm 49, the older we get, the more with at least friends and things of that nature that I try to allow myself to be more vulnerable. But that, again, I don't know that that's necessarily 100% a bad thing. There are difficulties in this card that I can, you know, recognize right away. But on the other hand, there are ways in which I don't think that's necessarily, I don't think I need to be open and vulnerable all the time, because I don't think that's going to be the best way to go about life either. That would be exhausting. So it's interesting. I do find this to be sort of an interesting way to see things. So we have the Sun card over here, which is something that I do not know about myself, but that other people know about me. So we have the sun. The sun rises after the unease of the moon has passed. With this card, we experience a glorious breakthrough, joy, relief, dawning of our own liminal light, speaks of brilliance and splendor and alignment with inner truths. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to get this here because I don't know how you talk about that. I guess, again, that is that idea of people probably seeing somebody who's quite confident, somebody who is probably self-assured. I'm thinking people probably, I'm just trying to think through this card, that people probably see somebody who is self-assured, and in reality, I don't see that. But again, I do more the older that I get, and I become more confident, and I become more strong in my own sense of self and these kinds of things. But the ideas of, you know, self-esteem and self-worth, you know, I can definitely see that card. I don't know how else to go into that one without sounding obnoxious. So yeah, there we have that. And then this is something that nobody, myself or others, should or probably know about myself. Or this is what this is supposed to stand for. And here we have the four, which this would have been, this is the Four of Branches, which is the Four of Wands. The Four of Branches indicates that your action and creative vision have reached a new level of achievement. And it's time to acknowledge and celebrate what you've accomplished. Soak up the satisfaction and revel in the lush complexity and diversity of your efforts. So, I guess, I don't know. I guess I try to, I mean, I have to work on that. This is my idea. I guess this is the idea of, you know, knowing what you've accomplished or recognizing what you accomplished. So it would be that nobody, including myself, see what I've actually been able to accomplish. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Again, I can see where, I can see where that's the case in some ways. I mean, we obviously nobody who hasn't walked in our shoes, right? Nobody who hasn't walked a mile or 2 or 3 or 20 in anybody else's shoes can really ever know the things that they've had to go through and the things that they've had to accomplish that may not be known. That you may not even realize what you have actually overcome. And certainly other people may not realize that. So I think that can go for a lot of people. So I think there's a lot of things that are interesting here to chew on and think about, and see just what can that tell us, you know, whether it's, you know, 100% accurate, or that nobody knows this about myself, or that I have no inkling. Because again, this is being very rigid, right? Where everything is right here, right here, right here, right here. I think in reality, those boundary lines are probably a lot more less structured, which is something I think would be interesting to hear, certainly what Annika thinks about that idea, that I don't know that the lines would be quite so definitive, whereas there may be some people who, you know, again, that I maybe open myself up to, may see some of this, so they might kind of be down here, right? And so same thing here, where there may be ways in which I get this a little bit, so my line might be a little bit over here, that kind of thing, where I think that maybe these lines and these sections are certainly not cut and dry, because I don't think anything about the psyche is cut and dry. So it's just interesting. I thought I would just kind of talk a little bit, or show you the spread, and I will put a link to, I don't know, to be honest, who started this, and so I will find that out, and I will put the links below, although I'm going to put Annika's first, because that's kind of more the conversation that I'm having, is with, excuse me, I'm going to try to catch all the coughs, but I apologize if they slip through in the editing process. But yeah, I'm more responding to having watched Annika's video this morning. I thought that's really interesting to think about, you know, how do we set ourselves up defensively against the sun. Maybe if you don't, if you don't see yourself as confident, then you're kind of defending against failure if you just constantly don't see. So I could see where there's a lot, I think, that you could think about in looking at these different cards and what that might tell you. And I would gather, and again, I don't know a ton about the Johari window, but I would guess that these lines are a little bit more fluid. And I know that the point of all this is to sort of expand and widen into these areas to learn about yourself and to, again, allow others to learn about yourself. The questions that I might have for other people to try this out is to what degree do you think that, do you think that it's healthy to have personal parts? Those parts, I personally don't think we need to be completely on display. What do you feel about that? Also, is there really any part that you just completely don't know about yourself? Because I feel like if you're really tapped, especially if you're used to working with your intuition, working with kind of dealing with the unconscious a lot more, I feel like you have inklings. You may not know it, you may not fully grasp everything, but again, I think that line starts to shift downward the more open that you are, and you might see something and recognize that, even though, so I don't think it's completely unknown. I think the point is to then start to navigate this unknown. And so, you might be here on the card, or you may be over here on the card, depending on the work that you've done to reach that level of self-awareness that I think that a lot of us are striving for in our walk. So I don't know if this was even helpful or interesting, but yeah, let me know if you try this out. If you put it on Instagram, link me so I can see what you do, or if you've made a video on this and I don't list it here, please put it in the comments so I can take a look. I just find it fascinating. I think it's an interesting conversation.